Hello, students. With today's session, we'll talk about various forms of investigation and surveillance. What is the role of private and government law enforcement agencies in criminal justice system? This will be discussing under our Unit 4, that is law enforcement and criminal investigation. In our previous session, we have discussed about what law enforcement agencies and what is its role in criminal justice system. And with today's session, we'll talk about what are the various forms of investigation and surveillance is. Post that, we'll talk about private and government law enforcement agencies. Learning objectives. Today's session is all about what are various forms of investigation and surveillance that we often do in the during criminal investigation process, and what are various types of role of private and government law enforcement agencies, like what they basically do, be it private law enforcement agencies or government law enforcement agencies, what they do basically in order to support criminal justice system. Learning outcome. You'll be able to understand what are various forms of investigation and surveillance involved in criminal investigation. At the same time, you'll be able to understand the role of private and government law enforcement agencies, in what way they can help us actually to uphold the criminal justice system. Role of private and government law enforcement agencies, be it private or government law enforcement agencies, both works on a similar cause, that they need to detect what is a crime and who has committed it and how the crime has been committed. For that, there should be a proper orientation on the methodological process, how to go with the investigation process. Post that, during investigation process, a systematic data collection has to be made. Once this data collection, with respect to investigation findings, written statements, witness statements that they have taken, overall key interview points that they have noted during the investigation, along with the evidence that's been taken by the forensic department or by the law enforcement agencies, they'll develop a hypothesis and how the things looks like. Once the hypothesis is done with the existing lab reports and the forensic reports, and followed by the police department's investigation report, they'll test the hypothesis whether the theory framed for that particular commission of crime is actually supporting it or not supporting it. Based upon that, the investigation findings will be reported to the court of law, and post that it will be sent to the judiciary system, where the judiciary system will take a call and recommendation whether the person has to be sent for correction process or the correction system, which includes prisons or juvenile homes, or a person has to be set free because he has been proven innocence. So, what are types of actions that has to be taken care during the investigation process? First thing, an immediate action is required. Second thing, we need to plan up our investigation process in a very fast and quick manner. Once that's been done with the proper process of investigation, data collection has to be the key step to look into. Once the data collection has been done for that particular scene of crime, we need to analyze the data with the help of particular scientific aids. So once that is being done, like we need to decide with respect to the corrective mechanism and implement it. This is purely when first taking immediate action and planning the investigation process is a law enforcement, that is police uh, thing, whereas third and fourth, data collection and analysis of data will be purely a forensic aspect, followed by fifth and sixth, that is decide on the corrective action and implement it and document the action reported, will be the judiciary process and the law enforcement process together. So this is the overall steps involved with respect to the private and the government law enforcement agencies in coordination with the correction system and the judiciary system. Now let's talk about various forms of surveillance. Basically, the key difference between surveillance and investigation is that investigation we often go with interaction, whereas surveillance we do without leaving a trace of us, that a criminal or a suspect will feel that someone is observing them. So it's a hidden process of investigation, I can term it as. Wherein when you talk about various forms of surveillance, we have audio surveillance, visual surveillance, tracking surveillance, data surveillance. And when we talk about audio surveillance, we have phone tapping, we have voice over internet protocol, we have listening devices. At the same time, when we talk about visual surveillance, we have hidden video surveillance, we have in-car systems, And we even have body worn video devices, thermal imaging cameras, forwarding infrared cameras, CCTV footages. All these are visual aids. And followed by tracking surveillance, it's all about GPS tracking or their location or maps, and even their mobile phones. Google Map search history help in tracking surveillance. At the same time, radio frequency identification devices, that is RFIDs, which been incorporated to their vehicle or something, like which gives an information about their tracking process. And biometric information technology, retina scans at airport. This all about knowing like where which all places the person have visited. Followed by the final process will be the data surveillance, which is purely a cyber forensic aspect, wherein we'll be having certain spywares or cookies or certain ransomwares. You'll get an information by sending some anonymous data to that particular person's phone, or even by retrieving data from that particular person or a suspect's computer, laptop, or the mobile phone for that matter. So these are various forms of surveillance that we can often look into during the process of investigation. So now let's talk about various forms of investigation. What are types of investigation that we do have? One is criminal investigation, which is often being done by the law enforcement agencies. That is nothing but police. So often, whenever police perform investigation, they have certain areas of coverage and mode of delivery, like what they are looking into, and style of investigation, how they perform the investigation. So here we have three categories. One is criminal investigation, where the investigation process is purely based upon a community or a person who has committed certain crime. Areas of coverage will be division, cross division, or force with respect to, we have discussed right previously with police department, ranging from state level to the suburban level or the taluk or village level. We do have police stations as per the division's hierarchy. So based upon that, the investigation areas of coverage will keep changing. And mode of delivery, it's non-uniform vehicle based. It's like during criminal investigation, often police people go with mufti, wherein they won't be wearing their uniform thing. They'll just visit certain locations just to understand, like just to make sure that they'll nab the criminal no matter what. Because if they go with a proper vehicle and uniform and all, the chances a person might tend to escape from that particular location. So to avoid this, since this being a criminal investigation, they go within a non-uniform vehicle based investigation. Then the proactive enforcement is really required here. The person or the police professional, whoever visiting the crime scene, or going to investigate the scene of crime with respect to the suspect or accused, has to be acting very proactive. At the same time, type of police team, like what types of police team, when we talk about investigation, we have incident based police team, we have division based police team, which is near to the crime location. We have uniform vehicle based police team, and we even have reenactive enforcement, which acts as a support for proactive enforcement team. Finally, community and neighborhood based investigation process includes place based. It can be a place based or it can be a neighborhood. Here, often uniform based, because you're dealing with a community or a group of people during investigation. So it's quite necessary that you need to show that you're from law enforcement agencies. So here, it includes both reactive and proactive process style of delivery, wherein a person need to continuously approach for certain things for the process of investigation to be carried out. Overview of investigation, how the investigation entire process looks like. Right, it start from formal complaint to notice of allegations by the law enforcement agencies. Initial investigation, the thorough search of relevant facts and evidence will be conducted by the trained investigator, often who is free from conflicts of interest. An investigation officer who actually investigates a scene of crime or investigate a particular situation of crime has to be, he should never be biased to any person for that matter, or any community for that matter. Then evidence review, it's all about a review of any evidence that is directly related to the allegation made with respect to the crime situation. Written responses, 10-day review period for both the parties to give their own narration about what has happened exactly. It can be complainant or it can be a defendant. It can be a complainant or accused in police form. So investigation report, once the fair investigation is done, overall summary of relevant evidence and the facts for that particular situation of crime has to be reported. to the judiciary system, post which a 10-day review period, parties may even submit the written responses in the court of law, which we often call it as written statement submission. Investigation process, like how it actually takes place. When you talk about principles involved in investigation, it's all about gathering information is the main thing, because you need to rule out the possibilities where the crime might have not occurred. At the same time, you need to gather information to ascertain the facts and situations with respect to that particular scene of crime, analyze the facts, implement the solutions. So these principles and steps help to ensure if you're walking through the process in an orderly manner. It's like what are the principles that gathering information, analysis of facts, or implementation of solutions, and the steps like securing the scene of crime, collecting evidence, developing sequence of events, determining the possible cause of crimes, and recommendation of informations, certain improvements required for the investigation process, and writing a detailed report. All these both principles and steps are just to ensure that the investigation process is going in an orderly manner. So that's the key thing to look in here. So when we talk about sequence of forensic investigation, is determined by the progress that's been made in the case. Here, entry and exit points, object moves has to be looked into. Here, this process is purely with respect to the scene of crime and unique character of the crime scene, like what type of crime scene it can be. So documentation is really required. When you talk about documentation, it may include videography, photography, sketching, crime scene finished rough sketching, and also at times it includes crime scene notes as well, followed by the evidentiary search, which we need to go with a proper evidence search pattern, followed by odors, hidden evidence, like various disturbed objects in a scene of crime, and then ascertaining the victim's dead body to analyze like what might have happened with respect to that person. So, and initial process of law enforcement, that's first responders interview process and the information given by them. So, with the observation, documentation of first responder and the forensic analysis report, one can actually assess the results and authenticate the hypothesis framed by the law enforcement agencies with respect to that particular scene of crime. So, this is how the overall process takes place. Now, if you talk about what is the key difference between private law enforcement agencies and government law enforcement agencies, first thing, whenever we talk about private law enforcement agencies, they are client oriented. Once the client gives certain complaint, they'll go work on particular case which is being given by the client, and they won't work much upon the crime prevention. Rather, they work on the findings, determining the possible cause of the crime. So once that is being done, that's the reason we often tell them that they are specific problem oriented, and they always work on loss reduction or assessment of the scene of crime in order to ensure that the person gets justice in the court of law through their report. And talking about protection of claimed private law enforcement agencies, it can be private guards, or it can be certain bounces a person, a VIP, if you people can often keep, it can be a private people. So this is what private law enforcement agencies often does. It's purely a client oriented one, whereas government law enforcement agencies is purely a citizen oriented one, wherein they works with respect to crime prevention, with respect to crime detection, and also with respect to generic problem oriented. If there is certain generic problem associated with society, government law enforcement agencies, along with the client oriented investigation, they do work on generic problem oriented investigation process, and they work on the correction system method. It's like once they find the culprit, they'll send him to the judiciary. From there, they'll be sending it to the complaint, the correction system, wherein the person will be imprisoned for the crime that has been committed by him. Followed by, during this process, what happens? Government law enforcement agencies are also working in terms of nabbing criminals and also getting reformed them by sending them to the correction system. There, it shows that the government law enforcement agencies works in apprehension of judiciary system as per Indian Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedures, and also which is driven by the Indian Constitution ultimately. So that is with respect to particular session. It was all about like how an investigation process takes place finally. So in case of any queries, please do reach out to me on Program FAQs repository link. Thank you so much. Have a great learning. Stay safe. Thank you.